Now let's start with vocabulary slips. This is a simple resource that you can do for any one of your lessons. It's also great for activities such as Charades, Pictionary, Taboo, because I like to have these activities as one of my extensions if they're not actually used earlier in my lesson somewhere. I almost always have the need to create some kind of small vocabulary slip. I call them slips because they're just little slips of paper. And you can do this by hand with just a blank piece of paper and a pen. But we have a simple little template here that makes this easy to create those little slips. It also has these little lines which make it easier to cut out those slips of paper after you've printed them. So I'm simply going to start adding some of the vocabulary for this lesson. If I wanted to, I can highlight them and then copy and paste them. So I have multiple sets. So right there I have some simple little slips of paper that I can print out. I can put them on some colorful paper just for fun. I cut them out, I stick them in a cup. We can pull those words out of a cup, and I am ready to go for a number of different activities for this lesson. Now this type of template is not just good for vocabulary slips, but it can also be used for creating a jumbled sentence, where the students get a bunch of random words and they have to put them in the right order. So I could choose a sentence, perhaps one of my sample sentences from this lesson, such as, the elephant is standing on its head. Now I have an easy way to print that out and to cut along those lines and to very quickly create a jumbled sentence activity for my students. It's a great activity for practice, for production, even for a warm-up. Now sometimes these little slips of paper are a little small and I might want a slightly larger size. So for that, we also have a larger vocabulary slip. These are a little bit larger, they're a little easier to move around, a little easier to hold on to. So some people prefer using these instead. So again, I could add my vocabulary. Or in this case, maybe I don't want to do the animal names. Instead, I could do some of those ing verbs that we had for this lesson. So I could easily work these into a game of Charades or Pictionary or Taboo. Or I could even use these as a resource for my tic-tac-toe game, etc. Now I can change the font of these if I like. So let's say if you're teaching children, or even if you're teaching refugee women who are in a literacy class, anyone who's learning basic literacy and is just becoming familiar with the alphabet and reading, then I can change this font to Comic Sans. And this is actually a good tip for those groups of students, for kids and people in literacy class, reading class, because this font actually mimics the style of writing that most of us use. And so you could change your font to that if you like. Of course, our lesson is about animals, and in our role play we're going to the zoo. So maybe I want to use a font that brings up that kind of feeling of being at the zoo or on a safari. So I'm going to try and find a font that brings up those kinds of feelings and just have fun with this. So I'm actually going to click more fonts, see what else I can find here. Here we go. All right, so now I have a fun Safari looking font. You can change the fonts. You can make them easier to read for your students, or you can find something that's just fun and that matches the topic of your lesson. So here I have 3 different types of vocabulary slips that I can do a number of different activities with. This is one type of resource that you can use with just about any lesson that you teach.